Welcome back to Combat Mission, where we're going to go over the mundane but very important act of getting in and out of vehicles. What orders you need to use to make your troops jump out when you want them to, fighting from vehicles and looting them for extra weapons and ammo, and of course a few tactical points to bear in mind. As usual, we're dealing with game engine stuff here, so although what you're going to be seeing here is Combat Mission Final Blitzkrieg again, this applies to all the Combat Mission games and is going to be really useful for people messing around with armoured or mechanised infantry in the modern titles. Obviously, if we're going to give the infantry a lift, we need to know which vehicles can actually transport them and how many infantrymen they can carry. Both these bits of information are on each vehicle's unit card, which shows up in the centre of the UI when it's selected. If we click on this Jeep, we can see a series of circles underneath the line of the vehicle's silhouette. We've got a single blue circle on the left and 5 grey circles on the right. The circles on the left represent the crew, and the circles on the right show the number of passenger spaces. So with our Jeep, we have a single crewman, the driver, and 5 empty seats. If we move a 3-man platoon HQ into the Jeep, 3 of the empty slots turn green to show that they're occupied. The colour of the slot changes according to the health of whoever's sitting in it. Crewmen start off blue to differentiate them from the green passengers, lightly wounded pixel truppen slots turn yellow, and incapacitated slots turn red. Very simple. If we click on different vehicles, the information changes according to how many crew and passengers they can accommodate. This M8 Greyhound has a crew of 4, but no passenger slots. This half-track has a crew of 2, a driver and a gunner, and 12 empty seats. Red Thunder and Final Blitzkrieg also allow infantry to ride on top of certain tanks, in which case the empty passenger slots are represented by triangles to differentiate them from the standard internal slots. Getting into vehicles is extremely simple. Just select an infantry unit, select any move order, and click on the vehicle you want them to board. If there isn't space for all the pixel truppen, the game won't let you place the order, so you'll either need to find a different vehicle with enough empty seats, or walk, though it is possible to split infantry squads down into teams that can ride in separate vehicles. Units will only mount up if a vehicle is stationary, so if we order our infantry to get into this half-track, and then give the half-track some orders, the infantry will try and get to the half-track's final waypoint and then wait until they can board. It's also possible for infantry to crew some types of non-specialist vehicles if they're completely empty, jeeps and trucks for example, and finally lighter anti-tank and infantry guns can be towed by ordering their crews to mount a suitable vehicle. Once our infantry is inside a vehicle, they have 2 new commands available to them. The first of these is the Acquire command, which allows the infantry to take weapons and ammunition stored in the vehicle. So if our infantry squad clicks on Acquire in this half-track, it has the option to take an M9A1 bazooka and varying amounts of 30 caliber M1 and M2 ammunition, 50 caliber armor-piercing ammo, and 60mm M6A3 heat rockets for the bazooka. It's important to note here that the infantry not only have a limited carrying capacity, but that the more weight they're carrying, the slower they can go and the faster they tire out. Feel free to load them up with 7,800 rounds of 30 caliber M2 if you want, but be prepared for them to stagger around the map at walking pace until they collapse. More importantly, aside from weight and carrying restrictions, the infantry can pick up any type of ammunition stored in the vehicle, whether they can actually use it or not. It's worth checking the weapons and ammo used by the squad to make sure you pick up the right stuff. There is no way to unacquire or put back anything your units grab, so if our infantry squad picks up a load of M1 carbine ammunition, it's stuck with it because it has no weapons that use that particular ammo. The second command infantry teams inside vehicles can get is the Open Up command. By default, infantry inside vehicles will sit down and act as passive passengers. If ordered to open up, they will become more active, opening hatches, manning the vehicle's extra weapons, and being prepared to stand up and use their own small arms if they feel the need. They are, naturally, considerably more likely to get shot when they do this, but the vehicle can benefit from the extra spotting and firepower in certain situations. It's worth noting that the option to open up isn't available on all vehicles. Some don't have any practical means for passengers to stick their heads up. Some vehicles, like our Jeep, are basically permanently opened up because of their design. Something else to bear in mind is that the open up command applies to the entire vehicle. Clicking open up with the infantry selected will also open up the crew, and vice versa. It's all or nothing. Leaving vehicles is very straightforward, though dismounting at the right time and in the right place can be a little tricky, with potentially disastrous consequences if things go wrong when the enemy is watching. The big thing to remember here is that infantry will only dismount from stationary vehicles. This means vehicles that haven't started to move yet, with all their waypoints ahead of them, and vehicles that have finished moving and completed all their waypoints. Or in other words, we can order the infantry out before the vehicle leaves or after it arrives. They can't dismount halfway, even if the vehicle pauses. To get out before the vehicle moves off, we can use the dismount command. The infantry will pile out immediately, then the vehicle will drive away. To get out when the vehicle has reached its final destination, we can use any of the movement commands. The vehicle will move to its final waypoint, then the infantry will get out and move to their first waypoint, which will be marked dismount. Trust me, once you've got these two ways of dismounting down, your infantry will have a much easier time. With the mechanics out of the way, it's time to have a quick think about the tactical side of things. The most important thing to consider when transporting infantry is that it is a risk-reward exercise. By mounting infantry in vehicles, we can get them to where they need to be much faster than if they were moving on foot, and give them some degree of protection from enemy fire, depending on the vehicle we're using. The downside is that vehicles are harder to conceal than dismounted infantry, and having a lot of troops crammed into a small space leads to high casualties if the vehicle suffers a penetration. So the key to using mounted infantry effectively is to accurately judge when the infantry need to get in and when they need to get out. A solid rule to follow is to get out and walk if you think you're going to get shot at with anything that can kill your transport vehicles, unless you think you can get away with it with enough suppression, smoke and speed. Knowing some of the little details, like what kinds of weapons your vehicles can resist, how long it takes the passengers to mount and dismount, where the doors or hatches they're going to be using are, and what kinds of enemy force they're up against, really pay off. So it's worth doing a little bit of research, even rehearsing in the editor or a blank quick battle. It's also usually worth having a route through your vehicles to see if there's anything useful in there, especially extra ammunition and anti-tank weapons. If you have a specific role with a unit that requires a lot of ammunition, like suppressive machine gun fire, something like that, it can be worth mounting them up in the deployment phase, stacking them with the relevant ammunition, and then dismounting them just so that they're well supplied and you don't need to do ammo runs. So, that is a really quick guide to giving your infantry a ride in combat mission. Hope you all enjoyed this one and found it useful. I'll catch you in the next video.